Oh yeah, sexy biscuits. Nice.
Long goes 1975. A YouTuber's on the rise, reviewing games late at night and sometimes friends. But Long goes 1975.
Hey YouTube, Lumboy's Post 1975. Welcome back to another retro video game comparison video. Sorry, I just got my hair cut and now I have to spend the next week getting, or adjusting to the fact that it's going to live in my eye sockets. Sorry, you didn't need to know any of that. Yeah, welcome back to a retro video game comparison video. I believe this is number 8. You've read the title, don't know where to point. I believe it's number 8, so I'm kind of, I think a large amount of these maybe focus on sort of Sega, classic arcade games of the 80s, because they were such a big force of the arcades in the 80s, and at least in my childhood, so that there's so many of them I can tick off the box. I'm going to go with After Burner, but I'm going to go the same route I did with Thunderblade, which is I'm only going to do the home console versions. Now, there's a stipulation in that, which is I'm going to do the initial batch, because obviously as systems got more and more powerful further down the line, but far removed from the time scale of when the arcade game came out, I should say, such as the Saturn and the 32X, you got better versions. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the initial sort of batch of home console ports. Simply because that would be, and that's kind of what these videos are about, my sort of reminiscing, that would be the first chance we got to experience this amazing game at home. Obviously it was released by Sega in the arcades in 1987, as was After Burner 2. It's going to be kind of a mixed match of both of them. Essentially the same game. Both came in those amazing hydraulic cabinets. As I've said before many times, lucky enough to play one of them in that amazing arcade in Westwood Ho. So I thought I would do obviously the MAME version, which I played very recently, but obviously it's interesting to see them side by side. I do the Megadrive and or Genesis version, the PC Engine version, then I do the Master System version, and one that I still find odd as a Sega fanboy, at least back then, the Nes version. I didn't really want to do the home sort of computer system ones because they came out in 1988, which is before the PC Engine and the Megadrive version, I'll give them that, but after the Master System version. But I just, again, it's about focusing on the consoles, because, this was the point in my life when I made the leap from computer to console and just wanted the home, sort of experience of the arcades. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. So where else would we start but with the arcade original? This is After Burner 2, released by Sega in 1987, obviously released the same year as the original After Burner 1. Very little difference, sort of, 4, 5 extra levels at most, but graphically I don't think there are any differences whatsoever. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I very recently did a gameplay of this. This is one of the phenomenal sort of daddy arcade games of the 80s. Everything Sega did back then, at least sprite scaling wise, was just, other companies were playing catch up. Right, let's get into this. This is iconic, mind. Sorry, clearing my throat, must be the G's, even though he's still on a plane. Look at the number of bloody planes, right? And there's even a Thunderblade parked in front of the tower. Not one of you lazy bastards could be asked to be my wingman. That's just not cricket. That might be a tad me going over the top with the missiles. I can't remember if they're infinite or some sort of score system is what tops them up, but you can flail them like an absolute mad bastard. Like a Middle East dictator, and just not ever seem to run out. Although, yeah, that looks so cool though. And alright, so it's sprites, and while they appear to come on the horizon, they actually come in really close towards the top of the screen. Yeah, it does this, that's brilliant as well. This brilliant sort of, fake 3D effect. Looks, that was fucking epic then. I was going to say, is he going to lock onto me? That's G-Lock, where they can lock on from behind, isn't it? Which I kind of consider a sequel to After Burner. Bollocks, let's put some more money in, because the whole point is I want to get to the next level so I can do comparisons against the home ports. I mean, obviously with the ports at the time, they were going to struggle to replicate this, at home, anywhere near as impressively as this. Obviously later on with the 32X and the Sega Saturn, obviously they had a little sort of horsepower under the bonnet to do it, but you know what, this still to me, maybe I'm showing my age, oh no you don't, bollocks, nostalgia, but I still think this is a graphically impressive game. Now, there we go. Right, it's not going to be as impressive as stuff such as Space Harrier, is it? That was really poor even by my standards, because it's single sprites for the most part, the enemies in this, and whereas Space Harrier was multiple moving sprites, you know, joined together to, you know, kind of replicate 3D bosses, but it meant there was a lot more of them on screen, they stayed around a lot longer, and because of the way they moved, you know, it was just more detailed. Ironically, it's an older game, isn't Space Harrier 1985? How the bollocks do you do a barrel roll? That's really iconic, the way it plows up the screen in the centre, first smoke and then just, well, molten balls. That's amazing. Right, yeah, check it out, that's the point I want to make, because one of the other home version, which is actually my favourite one, which means I've probably given it away, does actually replicate that, but stunning game, absolutely stunning. You know, back in the days where it was impressive hardware for the time, but they were working with the limitations of how do we do 3D when we don't actually have 3D. Anyway, on to the next version, methinks. Okay, so this is After Burner 2 on the SEGA Megadrive, obviously ported by SEGA themselves in 1990. I don't know whether this came out before or after the PC Engine version, which is the version I'm going to play after this. I mean, right off the bat, the title screen itself is really impressive. I mean, I would say that rotation effect is better than the PC Engine version, but we'll have to wait till we get into that version. It has different images from the arcade, but it does have some sort of, you know, kind of, do I say digitized stationary images of real, you know, Tomcats. Or F-15s, F-14s I should say, never mind. Right, let's get into it. Now, this isn't my favourite version, but it's, you know, it is what it is. It's a very impressive port, considering the hardware of the time, and I think everyone was pretty happy with this when we got it. Right, let's get straight into it. The ship looks absolutely fantastic. It's just stationary, you know. Now, oh dear God, it's not an invert. Your cannons, check out these cannons, fire continuously all the time in this. You don't control those, that's kind of taken away from you. It doesn't really detract from the game a lot, you know. In fact, it makes it easier in the sense that you just kind of have to just fly around, and, you know, anything that flies in front of you is toast. There appears to be a massive, I was just going to say, a massive lack of bad guys. Oh, there we go, they're all coming from behind because they're sneaky bastards. The scaling effects on the planes, you know, obviously very limited, but it's still pretty good, you know. You still get that sense of them coming in behind you and, you know, passing slowly in front of you. I will say that I'm starting to notice with all the home versions, or recall from the times I've played the home versions, right, let's get some fucking rockets in your face, bitches, that the stages are far shorter. Whether that was a memory thing, I'm not sure how much memory a game like this takes up, because so many of the levels are, you know, so similar as are, you know, the way they play out. But I mean, memory's memory. But yeah, it looks like the arcade, obviously, as you would expect. Ah, bollocks, that's cool, mind. And it's, yep, cool molten balls there. But, you know, it looks like the arcade. I mean, we would probably have been less critical, and just the fact that it's an early Mega Drive, possibly a launch game, we would have just shit our pants back in the day at being able to play this at home. And so we probably wouldn't have been as critical as we are, or I am going to be, obviously, in a comparison video, you know, these days. Alright. Nice. Again, that looks really nice, but this is what I want to show the difference between this and the PC Engine version, because I would say, push comes to shove, that this is better graphics than the PC Engine version. Not by much, people, not by much. There we go. But it's just, I don't know, could it at least try some of the scaling on the sort of bigger objects or planes? Because if you stop to think about it, games like Space Harrier 2, you know, albeit very crudely compared to the original Space Harrier arcade game, hey, and my lunch is still down. That's because I had ginger. Sorry, travel sickness reference there for when I was a kid and we used to go on holiday in the car. Never mind. Yeah, I don't know, you would have thought, I've lost my train of thought completely, they would at least try some scaling effects to kind of, you know, keep it in line with the arcade, and that's obviously what Space Harrier 2 did, poorly. But they just didn't with this, you know? I mean, obviously they did with games like Outrun, so I'm always kind of a bit surprised with that. Right, anyway, on to the next version. Okay, so this is After Burner 2 on the PC Engine. Obviously, it was ported by NEC themselves in 1990. Interesting that NEC did so many ports of Sega games, and a lot of the time they were better than the Sega home ports, or at least the Sega home ports on the Mega Drive. I know that's kind of, you know, taste is subjective, but this is my favourite version of After Burner. I would say, while it doesn't look quite initially as good as After Burner on the Mega Drive, It does some things, or it does some more impressive things with the limited hardware. Tries, I don't know, punches above its weight. It tries to be a little bit more like the arcade experience. Right, let's get into it. This is cool. There is an option in the menu to play around with these balls, but that's kind of really, really cool. Again, obviously that's just stacked sprites, which is what, you know, obviously sprite scaling, at least in the arcade, it's based on. This is a kind of more limited, crude version, but there's no denying that that looks really, really cool. Right, now this is what I really, really like, because it's clunky and as crude as that looks. And if you notice that the ship in this is 256, whereas it's 128 in the arcade, it at least, you know, attempts to, you know, put some level of the arcade scaling effects in, other than just the planes whizzing by you, which in themselves are really, really cool. Now, it's a difficult call to make. Oh shit! But, and also in this version, your guns, actually, like the arcade version, and your missiles are on independent buttons, which is cool. But yeah, as you would expect from the home version, there's the graphics on the ground are very, very sparse. But there's, oh bollocks, nice change of light there. There's no, it's still got that iconic, and the balls are even bigger than the arcade ones. It's got bigger balls than his parents. But yeah, the plane scaling effects are brilliant, but the ground graphics are very sparse. But I would say that the Megadrive probably does, lock on, have sort of better ground graphics. Not by much, you know, it's probably a hair's, you know, whisker in it or whatever, but why? It's good to see that I'm crap at barrel rolling in whatever hardware version I play. With the exception of the, oh, there we go. Oh, and I'm dead anyway. But at least I got to throw up shortly before I died. Yeah. Something so satisfying about lock-on missiles, even in crude games like this. Now, this is the point I want to make again. Look at the plane coming over the top. It does not do on the Mega Drive, and that's more impressive than when you take off. That is, I think that's absolutely, you know, phenomenally good. Has it got the same number of levels as the Mega Drive? I think it has. You know, it's got very minor differences. I said the graphics, you could argue, are better overall on the Mega Drive, but there's no denying this. Those little things like that scaling that just make this more like the arcade experience, and at least in my opinion, that is why it's my favourite version. Oh, it's probably a little bit more forgiving than the Mega Drive version, I would say as well. That's words to die by right there. I tell you what, right? I mean, I know it's a video game, but Jesus Christ, how does my plane even take off if it's packed with this many rockets? Anyway, on to the next version, and now we're going to go 8-bit. This is After Burner on the SEGA Master System, released by SEGA in 1987. This is obviously After Burner, not After Burner 2, which you would expect, because, you know, it's the, I want to say this is the original home port on any system, because wasn't the Spectrum, you know, the Amstrad, the Commodore, the Amiga, the Terra ST, all those ones by Activision, wasn't that 1988? But this is easily, you know, the first home version I ever played. I've told the story before, but that's second-hand Master System I bought. My parents gave me half of it. I paid for the other half, got it for Christmas with After Burner, Hang On, Snail Game obviously built in, and Wonder Boy. And this just blew me away, because yeah, it looks crude, but by today's standards it really does. But you got to remember, back then particularly, it's the size of the sprites in this version that are really, really impressive. They're huge, they're really, really big, and they do bear a really, really strong resemblance to the arcade. They're instantly recognizable, is what I should say. Now, these pictures look a bit kind of rubbish and bollocks, but at least it has pictures trying to, what it's trying to do, which is why I could say in some ways it's comparable to the PC Engine version, is it's trying to bring that arcade experience or make it feel like, you know, and that was the whole shtick with the Master System, wasn't it? Arcade experience at home. Right, there's a trick you can do, I forget what it is, where you angle your plane in one direction, it will let you go through the first 15 levels by rockets just fly underneath you, then after that, you can't use it anymore. I don't know how I found that out as a kid, but I did. Right, let's get into it. Now that's really, really, really impressive. There's no denying the ship looks absolutely fantastic. Right, and it's on invert, which I like. Right, and your guns, unlike the Mega Drive version, you have to, you know, you have to hammer the fire button. Aye, barrel roll, nice. You have to hammer the fire button to use them. They don't come out continuously. I don't know. There's an option on the Mega Drive to change that. Way, but I kind of like it like this. Right, there we go. There, and you can properly flail your rockets like a mad bastard as well. So you've got to remember its limits and that. And I don't know how well it was received at the time, because I never recall, you know, reading a review or seeing a review on it, or anything outside of just the flyer that used to come, you know, in boxes for Sega games. That's really, really cool as well. You know, that it's, I don't know, I had no problem with it as a kid. I know it wowed me and my brothers. I mean, bearing in mind we came from a Spectrum and we had experienced it in the arcade, but yeah, we just shut our pants and all thought this looked absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to stand my ground and say it now that I still think, you know, obviously I've got nostalgic vision and stuff like that, but I still think it holds up and it's a really, really good port of After Burner. And also what's interesting is the levels appear to be the sort of, well, not the same length, but they don't seem to be as short as they are on the 16-bit versions. You don't seem to be like, I don't know, After Burners, if you know what I mean. Alright, the rocket effects are kind of different, but again, they look, you know, they do the job. The planes, you know, scale reasonably impressive. Now, obviously, it doesn't scale like it did. You know, it's the Master System version of Space Harrier, which is obviously really, really, really impressive. But then what you can say about this version compared to that, which I guess could be an argument because, or could be argued because of the lack of sprites in comparison, is there isn't that much flickering on this version. But yeah, all in all, this game really, really does still impress me. It's good to see that your radar is as fucking useless in this version as it is in all the other ones. I don't know, maybe it's just eye candy to make you feel like a real pilot. Right, but yeah, this, I mean, not just because it was the first home port I played, but I just think this is an absolutely solid and fantastic port. Ah, miss me. I shouldn't say that out loud, should I? Right, on to the final 8-bit version, which you'll see, if you've watched my channel, you would have seen a gameplay of it before, but still, as a SEGA, you know, fanboy, particularly back then, when I found out that this was on the Master System, on the system it was, I should say, it was like crossing the streams. So this is After Burner on the NES, released by Tengen in 1989, obviously based on the original After Burner in 1987. I've told the story before, but I'm going to tell you it again. There's another version that was also released in 1989, by the way, that was made by Sunsoft. I don't know what the difference is, whether one was in one market or one was in another market, because as far as I can tell, with the exception of the boat logo, or the logo on the runway on the boat looking slightly different, and the title screen being different, still pretty bad, they seem pretty much identical. But I don't know. If you do know, let me know. But anyway, yeah, years and years ago when we went on our first sort of holiday to visit my dad's brother in Boston, and you know, he was looking after us for the day, and his daughter who left home, her original NES was still in the basement, so he took us out to rent some games for it so we could play on it, you know. And obviously I had my Megadrive at this point, but I think this was, you know, I hadn't played much NES at this point actually. I mean, one mate of my circle at school had one. Everyone else had the Master System. And yeah, so we went into a local video store, and I remember seeing this, an Alien Syndrome, and my brain just had a complete, you know, warp out, spasmy fart mode, because it just went, but this can't be on the Nintendo, it's a Sega game. Obviously now I understand that it was licensed by another company. I wonder though if Sega were ever completely happy that it was on there, but let's get into it. See, the boat is kind of, you know, nice graphics. Immediately though, you notice that, you know, obviously there's a draft in here because everything, all barrel roll, is small. I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's like the Micro Machines version. Everyone else is playing their G.I. Joe F-14, but, you know, one kid has to turn up for your playground fight with fucking Micro Machines F-14. It is what it is. It's a decent, you know, playable version of After Burner. You know, I mean, you can't really go wrong as long as you stick to the mechanics of the arcade, but it's not that the graphics are terrible, it's just the palette, which I'm going to argue, and people, you know, by all means will pick a fight and say fanboy, whatever. Sega, to me, the Master System had a better colour palette. But surely the NES could have done sprites as big as the Master System version. Was that lazy programming? Was it, difficult for them to achieve? I mean, I kind of doubt that. So it would be nice to see a version more like that. But that, to me, is why this is, you know, obviously not going into the home computer versions, the weakest 8-bit version. All right, granted, if we're going to go consoles, we can only really compare it to, you know, the Sega Master System version. So that's a pretty poor argument. Still got a bollocks radar top right. Oh crap! See, a good explosion there. He doesn't. You know, well, maybe if I get shot in a different part of me, I will plough into the earth, because, oh, look at that. Locking on seems a little bit easier, he says, but he missed everyone in the Master System version. Oh, come on. Nice. Sweet. Obviously, I got infinite rockets. Yes, come on, ploughing. Sow that seed for Mother Earth. Never mind, that got away from me, but yeah, I don't know, I mean, this was the only way you could get to play it, because obviously even if you had an NES at home and you wanted to play the After Burner in the arcade, so it must, you know, probably, was it still well received? Anyone in North America? If you know, remember magazine articles on this on the time, was it, of the time I should say, was it well received? Because I always find it a little bit disappointing. Maybe it's because I played the Master System version first. Yeah, I just found this kind of disappointing that everything was so small. That sounds like a really poor argument, but yeah. This was a comparison of the home versions of After Burner of the time. So if you have a favourite version, what's yours and tell me why? Obviously, we could kind of adhere to these sort of consoles because this was the initial, you know, 8-bit, 16-bit systems that we got a chance to experience, you know, console-wise, After Burner at home. I mean, you know, I don't include the Saturn or, you know, the 32X. But anyway, also, if there's a comparison video you'd like to see me do, because I am keeping note of them, and I have the games or the software or the ability to do it, then I shall have a pop. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later.